And can I also commend my colleague Deputy Ciarán Lynch for bringing this motion to the House this evening. And I want to fully concur with Deputy Willie Penrose in my disappointment at the fact that the Minister is not here tonight, but also the wording of the Government's amendment to this proposal. Because it does indicate the priorities of government as opposed to the priorities of the Labour Party, where we are focused on the basic right of a person to have a home and to stay in their home and to protect their home in times of difficulty. Whereas the government's response is in very stark contrast to what happened when, in the dark of night, the banks went to the Minister for Finance approximately a year ago and told the Minister for Finance about their troubles. And all of the guns were brought out blazing, and €54 billion of taxpayers' money was put at risk, and everything was turned upside down in order to protect the banks. But there is absolutely no sense in this response to this motion tonight that there is any sense of caring about the plight of the kind of families that are losing their homes, and there are many, many of them. And I know one family in particular where the young husband and wife with 2 small children, where the husband's job is gone because of the downturn, and they have literally had to walk away from their home and go back to her parents' family. And we all know families like that. And you know, the contrast between the sense of urgency about the difficulties of the banks and no sense that this is an urgent matter is very much in the wording of the amendment from government. And I'll just quote from their sort of final paragraph in saying why they're rejecting the Labour Party proposal. And it says, the introduction of a blanket 2-year moratorium as proposed runs a substantial risk of creating unfavourable perceptions in credit markets about the future performance of a significant part of Irish bank lending, and that such a perception could increase funding difficulties and raise funding costs for Irish banks with damaging consequences for all of their customers. Now, I have to say that a caring government should have as much concern for the lives of the ordinary citizens of this country who are in difficulties as it has for that gobbledygook sentence about their care for the banks. And the whole preamble of the government's response is all about putting things off and having no sense of urgency. It talks about envisaging ways of expanding mortgage support measures will be examined. The renewed programme for government envisages reform of debt enforcement. And the very last sentence of the government's amendment expresses its confidence in the success of the government's efforts to deal with the worldwide financial crisis and its impact on Ireland. Absolute delusion about the fact that there's a difference between cyclical and structural difficulties that we're in, and absolute total denial of the part of it that has been caused by mismanagement of government over the last 12 years. And I mean, when I read things like that, I just despair of the ability of the government to actually care about the ordinary citizens of this country and their rights to have a home and their rights to have a job, and the kind of things that the Labour Party cares about. And you know, the reasons why people can't pay their mortgages are because they were sold overpriced houses, they were given unsustainable loans, as outlined by Deputy Ciarán Lynch in detail, and they lost their jobs. And it is not the fault of those ordinary people who took out the mortgages. None of those 3 reasons is their fault. It's the fault of the triumvirate, as outlined again by Deputy Lynch, of the banks, the developers and the government, who got into cahoots together and totally inflated the price of ordinary houses for ordinary people. And those ordinary people are now in trouble, and the government, quite frankly, doesn't seem to care whatsoever about their plight in reading the wording of this government amendment to the Labour Party motion tonight. And I just want to strongly support the proposal, which is very reasoned and very well thought out by Deputy Ciarán Lynch, which is about giving a 2-year moratorium, which in the circumstances we find ourselves in, where hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs, where most of those people do have a genuine hope of getting back to work if we can all get together and have a programme of national recovery, as outlined by our party leader this morning, and get together and figure out how to sort out the problems of this country, then there is a real prospect that those people will be able to begin to pay their mortgages again in 2 years, but not in 6 months. And I just feel that there is no real sense of engagement by this government with the ordinary people who are affected by this downturn. And there is a huge sense of doing everything to sort out the problems of the banks and the developers, nothing about the ordinary people.